The lesson for today will be the past perfect. Once again, simple version or continuous version. I think you have by now understood that for each verb tense, there is a simple version and a continuous version. So you can draw parallels between verb tenses. We might at some point try to synthesize all these verb tenses in a table, so you might see the differences but also the many similarities between those tenses. So if you have understood how the present perfect works, you will have no difficulty understanding how the past perfect is used, because it's exactly the same meaning, the same values, the same principles, right? It's exactly the same reason why we use this verb tense, but it applies to events in the past. Remember what I said about the present perfect? The present perfect is a verb tense that belongs to the present. It's not a tense that refers to the past. It creates a link with the past, but it's a present tense. We might say that in the present, you do get present simple, present continuous, and present perfect. You have actually 3 tenses to express things that are happening in the present. This is how I see it. Now, the past perfect is a past version of the present perfect. First, let's get started with the construction. So the simple version of the past perfect is had. Actually, this is this that becomes had plus the past participle. So this is the construction. Had plus past participle. Remember, 3rd column for the many irregular verbs that you have to learn. The continuous version, very similar. Had, been, plus the verb in the gerund. I used this in order for you to understand that it's exactly the same as present perfect, but in the past, so it becomes this. Okay? So, construction, if you want to form a question, I keep confusing this with the present perfect, see? Had you locked the door? Had you locked the door? Negative sentence, I had not locked the door. If you had to use this verb tense with the continuous version, you would say, had you... I keep confusing those two. They're so similar, it depends really. So, had you been drinking? And the negative version would be, you had not been drinking. Already you can feel that you're really drawn to the past. I will start with this particular example. I had not locked the door. So if I place myself on a timeline, remember what I told you, T0 is where we stand, T minus 1 is where we are, T minus 2 is something that happened before a past event. Usually students say it's an old past. So this is event number 1, this is event number 2. Something happened first, which then led to a second action, but everything is in the past. There is no relation whatsoever to the present tense. Let's say I had not locked the door. As a result, my house was broken in. Someone came, like a burglar, came and robbed my house. Robbed my house. God, tired. As a result, my house was broken in. Okay, so a burglar came in. What you're trying to show here is that the first event here is the fact that you had not locked the door. Right? You had not locked the door. Actually, what I should have done to be a bit more clever, realize, is to say you had not locked the door. That's what happened first. Now, as a result, your house was broken in. So, once again, and I hope you understand this, a first event that happened in the past has an incidence on the second event. But all this in the past. And this is the same principle as the present perfect that creates a link, but the link is between this moment in time in the past and the present. Here, it's between an event in the past and another event in the past. So it establishes a link. It establishes a link between t minus 2 and t minus 1. I hope this is clear. It happened yesterday as she had predicted. It happened yesterday as she had predicted. So we're here. It happened yesterday. She had predicted it before. So once again, she had predicted it was here. It happened. It's here on our timeline. I impressed Tom because I had published a book. He was impressed because before I had published a book. So it's really like T1 results on T minus 2 results on T minus 1. Now, another reason for using the past perfect is to create a time sequence. A time sequence. You want to indicate the order in which events happened. You want to say, first this happened, then this happened, then this happened. So for example, she died in 2003. She had led a miserable life. I'm reusing my colors because I think this is really helpful. She died. I need to be a bit. I did something I didn't want to. That's okay. I'm going to rewrite this. She died in 2003. I'm going to have to be consistent with my colors so you might understand. She died in 2003. Let's say this is what happened. Okay. Before, she had led a miserable life. Well, you have to live before dying. I suppose you all agree with me on that fact and on that point. So she had led a miserable life. Maybe actually it lasted for quite a while, but first she has to live a miserable life before dying. So the order of sequence would be first she lives a miserable life and then she dies. Right? So she died in 2003. She had led a miserable life. This happened before. Another point is the continuity between events in the past. In the past. Remember when we used since for and for, when you use when I use the word continuity, I'm thinking mainly of using since and for. Continuity is this idea that this French depuis, since and for, right? So it works the same in the past. You might say she had known John for years when he became president. When he became president. So once again, if I draw my timeline, I started knowing John here, and this continued for years and years and years until he became president. So there's a continuity. It started here and until the moment he became president. It continued the moment he became president. Exactly the same idea with this for and since, but in the past. You can't say she has known John for years when he became. What would be wrong in this sentence is you use the past, so the event is here. It's not a present perfect anymore, it's a past perfect. So he became president, and before she had known him for years. I hope this is clear enough. If you have any questions, do not hesitate, obviously, to ask me those questions by whichever means you feel like, with any means you feel like. Right, now what are the particular uses of the past perfect? Most of the time we use it when we talk about reported speech. You know, someone says something, like for example, he said, I met her yesterday. I met her yesterday. Right. If you want to report what he said, you'd say, he said that. And because you report what he said, you say, he said that he had met her yesterday. It's a question of verb agreement. If someone says something in the past, in T0, if you report it, that would become the past perfect. The past perfect. Sorry, there you go. So if someone says, "Oh, I ate a lot today," you say, "He said that he had eaten a lot yesterday." So this is reported speech. Something students do not like most of the time is the model past. I don't know how to call it, model past or unreal past. Something that we have discussed already when you use if or I wish or I'd rather. I'd rather, which, let me remind you, is I would rather, I would prefer, would rather. So remember we said that we could use the past after those words in order to indicate that the situation was broken from the present situation. Remember what I said? This is, we are here, we're imagining a situation. I wish I were rich, for example. And I'm hoping. Now, sometimes you can use the past perfect to indicate that the situation is over, and most of the time it expresses regret. So if you said, I wish I had money, so if you used simply the past, you would say, I hope someday we'll have money. I wish I had money, which means I don't have money right now, but I'm dreaming about it and it's still possible. If you say, I wish I had, and don't worry about having had, this one is an auxiliary, this one is the verb. I wish I'd had money. That means that, unfortunately, the situation or the chance of having money at some point is over. That will not happen. When you use this one, it might still happen. I wish I had money means maybe I will win the lottery one day and I will have money. But when you say, I wish I'd had, yes, I'd had money, it means that you won't have money anymore in your life. It's finished. Maybe, I don't know, you're about to die and say, I wish I'd had money in my life. But this will not happen now, right? So that's when we prefer using the past perfect than the past. Same thing with if. Say, if I had money. So you are imagining and projecting yourself into a dreamland in which you had money. Say, if I had money, I would go and live in New Zealand. Right? But if you say, if I had money, oh, there you go. If I had money, that means that very sadly you're unlikely to have money anymore. You might imagine someone at the end of their lives once again saying, "Oh, if I'd had money in my life, I would have done this, or I would have done that." So that's why I mentioned the word regret, because you wish something had happened, but it will not anymore. Same with I would rather. Remember, I would rather you didn't smoke. If you simply use the past, it means my preference for you is not to smoke. So I would prefer for you not to smoke. But if you say, oh, I forgot rather, by the way. If you say, I would rather you hadn't smoked, the idea is that this is something that happened in the past. I would rather you hadn't smoked, which means you did smoke, and now you're sick, for example. You would say, I would rather you hadn't smoked. So you have a form of regret about something that somebody did already. The action here has been done. Here, when you say I would rather you didn't smoke, it doesn't necessarily that the person is smoking. Maybe someone is not smoking. You're talking to your teenager. You're a mom. You're talking to your teenage son or daughter, and you want to warn them about the dangers of cigarettes. You say, I would rather you didn't start smoking. I would rather you didn't smoke, which means I wish you didn't smoke. That's my preference. But it doesn't necessarily mean they're doing it. But if you say, I would rather you hadn't smoked, it means they have. So the action has been carried out. So this is like the main use of the past perfect. Now, very quickly, the continuous past perfect is just the past version of the continuous present perfect. Continuous past perfect. So once again, you would have evidence that an action took place. That an action took place. If you said, Rob looked outside the window, looked outside the window, it had been snowing. Maybe he can see that it's white all over, that the treetops are white. He can see that there are snowflakes on the windowsill. There is evidence, there are traces that it had been snowing at some point, which is different from a sentence that would be, Rob looked outside the window, it was snowing. This is very different. If I place myself on this timeline, if you said first sentence, Rob looked outside the window, okay, he looked outside the window, it had been snowing. You know that had been means it happened before, means that it had been snowing, and now here in T-1, we can see that there are, for example, snowflakes, or that it's white. So we have evidence that something happened before. But if you say, in the second example, if you say, he looked outside the window, T-1, it was snowing, it means the moment he starts looking outside the window, it started, but it's ongoing. It's still snowing. It might not necessarily be the case in the first sentence. We say it had been snowing. Maybe the snow has stopped, but now it's white. It's like everything's covered in white. But if you say it was snowing, it means they're in the middle of it. Snow is still falling. So that's the first point I wanted to make with a continuous past perfect. The second one is still this idea of continuity. that usually is associated with for and since, as I mentioned. So if you say they had been playing tennis for an hour when the storm broke out. Once again, back to my timeline. This is what they did. They started playing tennis in T-2, right, in the past perfect. It had been going on for a while when suddenly the storm broke out. So it means that when the storm broke out here, they were in the middle of playing tennis. The action was ongoing. So they had been playing tennis for an hour when the storm broke out. You could say they had played tennis for an hour, but the fact that you say they had been playing means they were still in the middle of it, or you want to stress the time they had spent. They had been playing tennis for an hour. You're insisting on the duration of the activity when this happened. I hope, once again, this is crystal clear. If you want